Welcome to another episode of Nathan Builds Robots. Today we're going to be checking out the Ender 3 V3 KE, which is the upgraded version of the Ender 3 V3 SE. This is the Klipper edition. So this will be running Klipper, it'll be capable of much faster speeds and accelerations, and in general you'll be able to print about 2 to 3 times faster on this machine than this base entry-level SE model. Now I'll get into all the details about how exactly these two things are different, but largely they're the same. They're built off of the same platform, use a lot of the same components, and have a similarly cheap price tag. There are a few very welcome upgrades on this KE model, and we'll get into those, but in general, these are going to be some of the most affordable 3D printers on the market, and they should offer a pretty good user experience thanks to all the convenience and quality of life features and structural upgrades that they've made to this machine. Now before we get into 100 questions about which printer is it better than, which printer is it worse than, I'm fully expecting this to be one of the best printers in its price point, so take that for what it's worth. If this thing doesn't surprise me with any shocking design faults, and this thing delivers exactly what we expect of it, then it should be one of the best printers, especially at this low cost entry point. These two machines also offer better quality and better value than any of the previous Ender 3s. So if you've got an Ender 3 V2, an Ender 3 S1, or any of the similar models, they're not going to be as good as these printers for the price. So if you're shopping for a printer today, you're definitely going to want to look at these two options. And what are the upgrades that they've put into this thing that make it better than the previous Ender 3s? Well, they've got a custom aluminum extrusion here. It's this T-shape instead of the traditional 20 by 40 millimeter aluminum extrusion. By going to this customized aluminum extrusion, they've made it much easier to assemble, and it's going to be more structurally rigid, and it allows everything to just be more compact in general. So this is a smaller, lighter package that delivers faster printing performance. Well, this is kind of a weird operation. You got to take this little cable and tuck it in through this hole down here. That's a bit tricky, and if I really tried to force it there, I might have damaged the printer. But just kind of tuck that cable in, and then slot that all together, and we're good to go. Another upgrade these let me make sure I'm recording. Another upgrade these Ender 3 V3 printers bring to the market is they're using linear rods on the y-axis. Both the entry-level model and the Ender 3 V3 KE have these linear rods, and that's just going to make everything a little bit sturdier and require less maintenance. They've also moved to an automatic bed leveling detection system that uses a load cell, and basically that means you're not going to have to manually calibrate the Z offset for your printers. Anyone who's been in this hobby for a while knows how to manually level a bed and to calibrate that Z offset, but those are extra steps that someone who's new to the hobby might not want to do. And for me, a distinguished veteran of the 3D printing community, I'm very glad that I don't have to do that Z offset manually. If that's all just automated, that's just better because that's less work that I have to do for every printer I set up. If I ever take this thing apart and put it back together, I'm not going to have to recalibrate it. So overall, it just reduces the workload on you by a great amount. Now that wire that was in the bottom actually goes up top to what appears to be a filament runout detection sensor. That's a feature that you're missing on the Ender 3 V3 SE, but you know, they had to strip back some features to get a really low price point for this entry-level model. And then this is the model that I think you're going to want to get. It's going to offer better value, higher speed, and more upgradability options in terms of the way that you interface with the machine. Since it's running Klipper, you'll be able to do all sorts of Wi-Fi stuff with it, whereas on this older machine, you're not going to be able to do that. Everything on this Ender 3 SE is handled through this little dial knob thing and an SD card. So, you know, a little bit older school workflow on this machine that's Marlin based, and you got the fancy new stuff on this Klipperized edition. Another major upgrade that they've put onto this machine is they're using a linear rail up top here. A lot of people upgrade their printers to use linear rails because it makes the whole machine stiffer and more able to handle high accelerations, and definitely on a Klipperized machine that's built for speed, that was the right choice. Also, linear rails are lower maintenance than V-groove wheels. This is the old school style V-groove wheel. They develop flat spots over time and require some maintenance to tighten them and calibrate them. It's a lower cost solution and it works well for entry-level printers, but for something that's facing more of a print farm type operation, having these linear rails is going to be really nice. Speaking of print farms, if you're operating a print farm and you've got a bunch of these machines, you can manage them all through the Creality print application and slicer on your computer. The way that interface works is you connect everything to your Wi-Fi network, and then it just loads up all your printers and you can assign print jobs and check their status. if you've got a webcam on these machines, which I believe you'd be able to upgrade this to have a webcam if you wanted, then you'd be able to do time lapses and all that kind of stuff that Klipper enables. All right, well, let's get this machine put together. It just takes a couple of screws in the bottom. Interestingly enough, they're using M4 sized screws instead of M5 or M6. Since they switched to this new aluminum extrusion, they were able to use smaller screws to put everything together. So we just flip it on its side, and we'll just install these 6 screws. Now, while this printer is flipped over on its side like this is actually a good opportunity to take a look at what's going on under the hood here. So I'm just going to loosen up these screws, and we'll take a look at the main board on this printer. I should note that all of those screws were tight from the factory, which is kind of surprising. On a lot of my earlier Ender 3s, they would come with a lot of loose parts, but it definitely looks like they've put a little more attention to detail in either the packaging or the assembly process to make sure that you're getting consistent bolt torques when the printer arrives at your house. All right, and taking a closer look at what's going on under here, we basically got our standard 350 watt power supply. There's a stamped steel frame running through the middle of this machine just to make it stronger for minimal cost. It's an injection molded base, which is really going to help bring the cost of production of this machine down. This kind of stuff isn't important for most people, but there's a look at the main board in case you were curious. There's some kind of ARM processor there. Maybe the main processor is in this little screen here. I might as well take this screen apart just to see if there's a processing unit hiding inside of there. So here's the board that's located on the touch screen. It looks like it's a little more complicated than I first thought. So I think the instance of Klipper is actually running on this board, and then it's just connected over serial to that main board, and that might be the same main board that's on the Ender 3 V3 SE, or at least a very similar one. Looks like there's some kind of chips and stuff. Onboard memory, I think, Wi-Fi module, processor, a lot of stuff going on here. So that's probably where the bulk of the cost increase comes from when you're upgrading from the Ender 3 V3 SE to the Ender 3 V3 KE. And let's just put this back together. I feel like all these disassembly side quests are making this assembly take longer than it's supposed to. I genuinely think you could put this together in less than 10 minutes if you were working on it and not trying to take everything apart while you're going along. So it's a very beginner-friendly machine in terms of the setup and assembly. Okay, and I think that concludes the assembly of this machine. Wait, there's 2 more screws, so we'll screw those in. And the last piece of assembly is we just attach this cable up here. This is using what appears to be the same 26-pin cable that we've got on the Ender 3 V3 SE. It's just being plugged into a different hot end up here. So we'll just plug that in. Now I was briefly stunned and confused there because on the V3 SE, the cable comes up on the right-hand side, and on the V3 KE, the cable comes up on the left-hand side. We'll plug in the... Whoa. Wait a minute. Oh, whoops, my bad. It is supposed to go the other way around. So this thing is really tightly put together. That's something that I kind of appreciate about these new Creality machines. Even these belts up at the top are very taut. Everything just moves smoothly, especially in relation to other machines on the market. So these are really well put together despite coming in at a very cheap price point. All right, looks like everything's working fine. I think I'm ready to turn this thing on and see how it works. Also, I should note this comes with an additional, looks like a volcano length nozzle with an MK8 style nozzle tip. Got to make sure the power switch is set to the right setting. It was set to 230 volts. I'm going to flip that over to 115 because I'm in the US. And we'll turn it on. All right, looks like the operating system is booting up. And this is running Klipper, so it might take a little bit longer to turn on than a Marlin-based machine. Oh, that was pretty quick. Okay, now we're going to go through the setup. Should be pretty simple. All right, I turned down the lights so we can read what's going on here. We'll pick English. Next step. Oh, looks like we've got a privacy policy here. All right, so there's a privacy policy that you have to accept while going through this process. Then you can set up your Wi-Fi. You can also skip the Wi-Fi network setup if you don't want to do it, but I want to test out some of the printing over Wi-Fi functionality for this machine because I think that's going to be a strong use case of why you'd want to get this machine over the Ender 3 V3 SE, especially if you're running a print farm or just want to do some more advanced print monitoring and job management stuff. And I find when entering passwords on these kind of touch screens, it's much easier to use a stylus or something like an Allen key. Just be careful not to scratch the screen while you're doing this. Also, I'd like to point out that this is a terrible keyboard layout. It's QWERTY, but they wrap it around, so it's completely unintuitive. It'd be better if these were just in ABC order if you can't fit a normal QWERTY keyboard on here. Alright, and for this step, I don't like cloud functionality. I don't like it on Bambu Lab, I don't like it on Creality, I don't like it on any machines, so I'm going to skip the cloud setup. Not that it would do me any good on this internetless Wi-Fi network I have. So now it's wanting to do a self-test. We'll go ahead and start the self-test. So it looks like it's going to go through nozzle heating, heat bed heating, nozzle cleaning, and calibrating that automatic Z offset. So all of those steps that you'd normally have to do manually, it's just taking care of all of that for you through this setup process. And as soon as it's done with this, you'll be able to start printing. No extra tweaking or calibrations or modifications needed. All right, is it done yet? Honestly, I don't know because I just went in the other room. It says self-test complete. Okay. And it looks like we're all good to go. Now would be a great time to take some noise at idle measurements. So we'll take the measurement an arm's length away. It says 37 decibels. I mean, this is barely any louder than background noise from if you've got any HVAC or anything running. It's a pretty quiet machine. I'll put the microphone up close so you can hear it. So it's not perfectly quiet. There's definitely a little bit of fan noise to let you know it's turned on. But for the most part, this wouldn't bother me. There's no files stored locally. Again, this thing has a little bit of onboard memory, so you can store some common files that you like to print on there. And you can send things over to this over the internet and, you know, have those jobs loaded up on there. Wow, this has got a 16-minute Benchy loaded up on it. We'll see how well it prints that little Benchy there. I'm going to be printing with some of this Galaxy Black Prusament. Alright, so I wasn't recording audio for that whole little bit. But let me just get you back up to speed. We're printing a speed Benchy right now. It said it should only take about 15 minutes to print, which is quite fast. I did a sound test on this machine. It's about 54 decibels when it's running at high speed, and when it's moving slower, it's about 51-ish decibels. It's using two 4010 blower fans, one on the left side and one on the right side, to keep everything cool while it's printing. And there's an axial fan right in the front here. It's doing a pretty good job. Everything heated up really fast. One of the nice upgrades on this machine over the Ender 3 V3 SE is the PEI heated sheet. I really dislike the polycarbonate heated sheet that comes on a lot of Creality's other printers. Now this appears to be following the Speed Benchy rules. It's printing 2 layers for the outside perimeter, and everything here is looking really nice and clean. Let's try and get up a little bit closer if we can. This thing is printing really fast, and as far as I can tell, the quality is excellent. So yeah, pretty nice printer. I think Creality's really focused on upping their quality, especially for their entry-level products and just across the whole product line. And I really think this Ender 3 V3 is a really good example of Creality sticking to their strengths. I think Creality is really good at making affordable printers, especially in this Ender 3 style format. I mean, this is what, $260 or $280? You've got Klipper, you can print really fast, you can control it over Wi-Fi, it's super easy to set up. I mean, this thing just really nails it in terms of product design and user experience. This has got to be the printer to beat, especially at this price point. I mean, just look at it go. All Alright, so I guess that's one boat done. Pops right off with that PEI sheet. And I'm going to change filament colors because people complain about how this Galaxy Black PLA hides flaws. So I'm going to switch out to Creality Hyper Series PLA, which is notoriously good at making decent printers look bad. It just really shows the flaws when you print with this stuff. So I'll print another one using this Hyper Series PLA. It's this blue stuff coming from the spool over here. So let's get that going. Alright, and now that this print is finishing up, you can see this blue filament really shows off any defects, and I think it's to Creality's detriment. I'm not sure why they ship this stuff with their printers, because if anything, it makes them look worse than they are. I was using this same filament in some other reviews, and the prints just, you can see every little defect on it, versus the stuff that Prusa sends out with their machines is very nice at masking and covering up any kind of print quality issues. So, I mean, good on Creality for being honest, I guess. But let's take a close look at these two test prints. And you gotta love that PEI sheet for having them pop off nice and easy. Alright, so if we look really closely at our test prints here, let's take a look at the black one first, because, I mean, this one just looks a little better. So here's our prints. As you can see, they're pretty nice. If you really want to nitpick, I'm sure you could find some flaws with these things. Let me turn on my stage lighting, provide a little bit more of a harsh lighting angle. And you can see, this isn't perfect. There's a little bit of inconsistencies there. But honestly, if you're at the point where you're complaining about that kind of difference in print quality, I think you might be a little bit spoiled. So this is a perfectly passable level of print quality. I really wouldn't have too much to complain about here. But you be the judge of what you think of this print quality. Switch your video playback to 4K so you can take a look at these up close. Overall, I think this is quite good print quality, especially for something that you just unbox and put together.